and welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Komet, and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Jason. Good to be back. How are you doing this week?
Good. It's good to be back, after a week off here for sure.
Yeah, episode 88. Excited to talk about some exciting topics tonight.
If you are a new listener to our podcast, Scott, what is the YYC Soccer Podcast all about?
So we talk about soccer in Calgary at the amateur, collegiate, and professional levels. We discuss the teams and the players from Calgary's soccer community, from the grassroots and amateur leagues up to the university and professional levels.
This week, we're going to be talking about some news out of Calgary Wild camp. They're continuing to sign players, and we'll get into some of that. We'll also talk about some other player updates with players with Calgary connections, and we also have an interview this week. Scott, who's our interview with?
Yeah, so we talked to Kendall Showers a few days ago. Longtime listeners might recall we had Kendall on the podcast in 2024. She was the top goal scorer in League One Alberta for Calgary United. And after the season ended, she got her first professional opportunity. She moved over to Greece to play for a club on the island of Crete. So we caught up with her, and she talked about what the first few months have been like for her over in Europe. She's a really interesting story, Jason, because as we didn't focus on it so much at this time as when we talked to her the first time, but she's 29, and before League One started, she had basically taken several years off from playing elite level soccer. So the fact that she's been able to get over that long break and excel at the semi-pro level and leverage that into a pro opportunity, you and I agree, this is a really cool story.
It is. It's cool and it's unusual, right? Because most of the time when people leave the game, they might continue to play at a non-competitive level, but after not playing at a high level for a good chunk of your 20s to all of a sudden your late 20s, take it up and not only take it up, like really do well. Like it's pretty impressive.
So we'll run that interview in a couple of minutes, but before we get into that, let's talk about the Calgary Wild.
This is Jacqueline Savixi, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So since our last episode, there have been a couple new signings announced for the Wild. The first one that was announced was a winger from Australia.
Yeah, there's been a couple of players with Australian connections on the Wild, so wasn't too surprised to hear another one was named. But we found out that Kahli Johnson, who played for Australia at the youth international level, 21 years old, she is now joined up with the Calgary Wild.
She comes with some really pretty interesting credentials here. She was playing for Western United in the Australian A-League, and at the time that she was transferred, she was leading the league in goals, like nationwide, with 8.
Yeah, so how many players is that now with connections to Australia or that part of the world? I think if you count Michaela Moore from New Zealand, very close by, of course.
There's Ali Green, who isn't Ali born in Australia, but she plays for New Zealand, I believe.
Yeah, correct. She's born and raised in Sydney and played for Sydney, but internationally represents New Zealand. But it's interesting that a good chunk of the Calgary Wild roster has come from down under.
Of course, this is difficult to, make this, try to really make this comparison at this point. But here we have a situation where we've got a player who's leading the league in the Australian A-League who's going to come play in the NSL. So are we going to be able to tell anything sort of about, level of quality based on that? I'm kind of curious to see how that will play out. But she is young. She's going to be one of the youngest players on the team.
Yeah, I think at this point, the only players younger than her would be the Stewart sisters.
I think so, yeah.
Unless I'm forgetting. But 21. And Jason, you noted that the Wild paid a transfer fee for Kahli Johnson, but we don't know how much.
Yeah, so I'm not going to suggest that I'm sure about this, but I have not heard of any other NSL team paying a transfer fee for a player yet. So that is a little bit noteworthy from that aspect. But, I guess it all tracks. She's a young player on the rise and there was value there. So I think they, I'm pretty curious to see how she'll play.
And as you mentioned, leading in scoring in the A-League with Western United, you have to assume that the club would not have been excited to get rid of her. So, of course, they would have wanted to get something in return for that loss. But very keen to see how Kahli Johnson fares for Calgary Wild in a couple of months. First game of the season is only 6 weeks away.
Mm-hmm. And the other signing this week was a signing that I've been kind of expecting for a while. The Wild had one keeper under contract, and it just seemed to make sense they were going to bring in another veteran keeper, and they did this week.
Yeah, just was it yesterday? I think they announced Stephanie Bukovec, Canadian-Croatian from Toronto, but has played professionally in a lot of different countries in Europe, including the Netherlands, Iceland, Croatia, Sweden, and most recently in the Belgian Women's Super League.
Yeah, and she's got 4 caps, I believe, for the Croatia national team. She's definitely got a resume, and she's been around playing in pro leagues throughout Europe. She also had a good run in League One Ontario a while back.
Anyway. Yeah, no, she was with Vaughan at Surrey and got goalkeeper of the year in League One Ontario. She also had a strong NCAA career before turning pro. She played for both Oakland University and Belmont University and was twice recognized with all-conference honors when she was at Belmont. And Jason, I guess this would be in her spare time, she's also very talented at football freestyle, and she has a YouTube channel. You can find her doing a lot of tricks with the ball, juggling, that kind of stuff. So that was a cool little tidbit that was included in the Wild's press release as well.
For sure. And I guess, I think at this point, you would think and expect that with her professional experience, it would probably be expected that she'll be the likely number one coming in. I would think. Wouldn't you think so, Scott?
I think so. I'm curious what Sarah Kelty-Dilling would say about that. It's always great when there's 2 talented goalkeepers and they can push each other for that starting spot. But from a CV perspective, from a resume and experience perspective, I think you're probably right. But of course, we'll have to wait and see once the preseason games get going, who's more likely to mind the net for Calgary Wild.
And to wrap things up with the Wild, this week was in the international window, and we saw, I guess, 4 Wild players in action for their respective countries.
Yeah, so Michaela Moore played for New Zealand against Costa Rica, and former podcast guest Jacqueline Savitsky suited up for the Philippines. And then the Stewart sisters, who we alluded to already in this episode, they played with Wales. U20?
Yeah, I think it's the U19 or U20. A few players away from camp for a bit, but I would think that by next week, everyone will have reassembled and stuff. But yeah, it's cool to see these players go off and play for their countries. I'm not sure. I didn't really look at the schedule to see if there's going to be any breaks for the international windows in the NSL schedule, but kind of hope there are, because if there isn't, team's going to lose a few players every window, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's 4 right there. And Lydia Bedford talked about that when we had her on a handful of episodes ago, about just how many of the Calgary Wild players are featuring for their respective national teams, and how that'll be a headache for her to figure out if there aren't breaks in the NSL when those international windows happen.
Mm-hmm.
This is Kendall Showers, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
All right, Jason, now let's run that interview with Kendall Showers that we talked about earlier. And our listeners can hear what she's been up to over on the beautiful island of Crete. We'd like to welcome Kendall Showers back to the podcast. As longtime listeners may recall, we had Kendall on our podcast, I think it was last summer. It was during the League One Alberta season. She was with Cal's United and had a great season, actually finished as the league's Golden Boot winner with 9 goals. Since then, she's gone overseas and is playing professionally in Greece with OFI Crete, who are currently in 4th place in the Women's League in Greece. Kendall, thanks for coming on our podcast again.
Yeah, thank you for having me on again.
So I guess we can start by asking you how it ended up being that you signed for a club in Greece.
So back in the summer when I was playing Cali's, Athena, Forlaz, who was playing with me, she mentioned she was going to Greece to play soccer, and a conversation kind of started on that. And we found out that a girl we had played with on Cali's, her dad actually is the president of the club in Greece. And from there, I had some conversations with people and talked to a few coaches about wanting to go play overseas, and met up with Aki is his name, and they're looking for a few more international players to help out. And so yeah, it just kind of went from there. It was very random, I would say. And I'm lucky, I think, just overall to just have the connection. And that's kind of just what happened. He reached out to me in October, and I came here in January.
How's it been going so far? Like you've been, it's a little hard for us to get some, detailed stats here about the amount of time you've been playing and everything like that. But I know you have been appearing in matches. So how's it been on the pitch?
I think just to give you a little bit of a visual, so we're allowed to have 5 international players on the team, but only 4 of them can actually start. So because I came in halfway through the season, we already had our 4 internationals as all starting players. One of them is our goalie, and then 3 of them are actually the top 3. And so coming in, I didn't really know what my spot would be or how things would work, but just because of that rule, obviously I'm not seeing as much time as I have seen on other teams. That being said, I have received, more playing time than, maybe some would think stepping in halfway through the season. I've already had a starting debut and that sort of thing. And so for being new, for never playing, this high level of soccer before, and just learning, I guess, as I go, I think I've received more time than I thought I would, I guess, at this point. And so things are going well, and I hope that I just take advantage of the time I do have when I get it.
For sure. And Kendall, I wanted to ask about, the opportunity that came up, because as we talked about last summer, you had taken a big break from really competitive soccer, and the fact that you used League One as a kind of springboard to start your pro career at, I think you're 28 or 29, around there.
Yeah, I'm 20. I just turned 29.
Just 29. Yeah. What is it like to find yourself in this kind of environment at this stage of your career, so to speak?
Sometimes I feel like it's not real, to be honest. I think like I'm kind of just living a dream. I feel, very grateful to have this opportunity, especially not having played high level and putting for a period of kind of maybe my prime years. But overall, I look at this as a massive opportunity for me, and I want to do the best I can. I want to be the best teammate I can. I want to learn as much as I can, and hopefully that will just keep the momentum. I think I do have a few more, I would say, solid prime years left, and so we'll kind of see what happens after this season. And with the Wild in Calgary, maybe I go back home and try and play there. But I think it's a great start to kind of my professional career, and doing it at 29 doesn't happen to everyone, so I'm honestly just grateful.
No, it's a great story.
So you've talked about integrating into a team as you've come partway through this season. So how's it really gone, like regarding like language barrier and that sort of thing? I think, I don't know how much Greek you knew in advance before you arrived, but I'm guessing that Greek is probably the standard there.
Yeah, so I mean, I attempted Duolingo before I got here, but I would say that it doesn't help whatsoever. Everything is in Greek. Like, I mean, I would say 95% of the people I play with, or the girls I play with, the staff, they speak a little bit of English for sure, but everything is normally always in Greek. So that's like team conversations, that's video analysis, that's all, game conversation or information on the field, and coaching just overall. And so, yeah, stepping into that, definitely hard, because the translation isn't necessarily the same as it would be in English. That was a massive culture shock and adjustment. I still, am trying to learn keywords But once you kind of get a sense of the words, it becomes a little bit easier. But it's almost like now that I'm just used to it, it's not as weird anymore, but it's definitely a foreign language. It's hard to explain, but it's been hard for sure.
Oh, I can imagine, Kendall. I wanted to ask about where you are, because Crete is an island off the main coast of Greece, isn't it? I recall
Yeah, it's
that.
an island. Yeah.
Yeah. What has it been like to be on an island then? Because maybe, even just to get to some of your matches, you probably have to take a plane or a ferry?
Yeah, so we usually either plane or ferry. We've traveled to Athens with the ferry or Thessaloniki by plane. It kind of depends where it is. This upcoming weekend, we have to go to Thessaloniki and then take a 2-hour bus ride to where we have to play. So honestly, no complaints. Like I think that's the part of the whole experience for me. Traveling around Greece, getting to play soccer, visiting different locations that I probably would have never gone. It's pretty cool. I'm taking it all in, but it's interesting. It's different, but it's awesome.
Yeah, and I've got a map of Crete up in front of me here. I wanted to ask, whereabouts on the island is the team based? Which city or region?
That's a great question. Ghazi, I think it's quite close to Ghazi. That's kind of where our arena is, and then down in the city center is kind of where the OFI men's club plays. We don't get to play there as often because it depends on when the men play, but I'm a little bit farther in the suburbs of Greece, about a 15-minute drive to where we practice and play at the arena. But if you see Ghazi on the map,
Okay.
that's kind of close to where it is.
Okay, cool. And in terms of, settling in a new country, as you mentioned, it's difficult with the language barrier. I imagine there's some other culture shock as well. But in terms of places you could land, it's quite a cool place to be, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. It's I can't complain. Definitely, because it's not really touristy season. Heraklion is quite a popular destination for tourists during the summer. It's a little bit quieter around here these months, but I don't mind that. It's different, but the food's amazing, culture's amazing, weather's great. So yeah, definitely not complaining about any of that.
Do you want to talk a bit about the club in general and how the season's been going? Like we team's in 4th place right now, and I think several wins in a row at this point. So it seems like the team's on a bit of a roll right now.
Yeah, I think one thing I would say about this league is that there are 5 teams, as you probably can see from the standing, that are tight. Ike, although they're in first, they have a little bit they're a little bit farther ahead, but like Pauk and us and I can never say the names. Panathinaikos. Yeah, we're all quite tight in points, so those games are kind of, we need to win those, and they're closer. And then there's some of the bottom teams there that might be just an easier win. With the league, there's always kind of a home field advantage as there is everywhere. But with the soccer here, it's quite different from what I would say we play in Canada, like I guess European style. I feel like yellow cards are thrown out a lot, and that causes issues for players. And you never know how the referees are gonna be. You never know what the field's gonna be like. For example, Pauk, we went to go play them, and they haven't lost at their home field in 15 years. They haven't lost. And so going to that game, all we want is the win. We ended up drawing 0-0, but it's that sort of thing that, it's pride, it's all that. And so these next few games over the next few weeks will kind of, show who's going to be the top 2, the top 3. But we are on a winning streak, which is great. And hopefully we just keep on that momentum. The girls just came back from international break and we're kind of back to practicing now full time. So yeah, we'll see. I think the team's finally kind of coming together and working together as a unit. And we hope to just keep that moving forward.
So we've talked about the team and the team's goals. We've talked about your experiences thus far, Kendall. Have you set any expectations for yourself in terms of performances or contributions to the team? Maybe a number of goals or assists you'd like to get? Anything you'd like to mention?
I think coming in to halfway through the season, my goal was really to play, just to get my feet a little wet. I think now after this past 2 months, I've really been able to adjust to the playing style. Like when I say it's quite different than how we play, or like how I'm used to playing and how I'm being coached. I'm not kidding. And for any player stepping into this kind of new atmosphere, new system, it's hard. And at the beginning, it was difficult to just know exactly what my coach wanted. But now after the 2 months, I feel like I finally figured it out. I'm finally playing the system they want to play. So my goal is honestly just the progress at this point. Just keep focusing on myself and playing the way he wants me to play. And I know with that, with the type of player I am and with, work ethic and just focus, that I can get possibly to, a starting position or capitalize on more opportunities on the field. He has me playing as a winger, so it's a little bit of a different position than I'm used to as a striker. I feel like it's a little bit more isolated, which is something that I have to get used to as well. But right now, for me, just progress every day is probably the most important. I can't get too ahead of myself, I guess, but
No, for
a
sure.
goal would also be nice.
Yeah. No, that's a great answer. I love that, Kendall. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the other international players. What countries are they from? Or is there anybody like from like English speaking? Like, has that helped at all?
Yeah, so we have an international. She's from England, and then a Slovakian, and a Nigerian, and then someone from Holland. So a few more English-speaking girls, but everyone else mainly is Greek.
Yeah. And are the internationals all trying to learn Greek together a little bit, or?
There's a couple girls who have been here quite a while, so they do have a better understanding of the language. So that helps them. But yeah, I think for us, it's just trying to listen to, as I said, like those keywords. It's like funny. I mean, you think that playing a possession game and it switching from one touch to two touch or, free touch is so simple when it's in your language, but then it's like, this happens on the fly in another language and you're confused and it's disorientating and it's different. So those moments you just try and remember and learn from, I guess, language wise.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about your experience in Greece these first few months before we end the interview?
We chatted before in the summer and I said then, like, I am trying at this point to just play the highest level that I possibly can. And if you look forward, I guess 5-6 months, like look where I am now. So like I think my story is different for sure. And at this point I want to be maybe a little bit of a role model to other young girls who are, maybe listening to this podcast or just trying to figure out their way. Like sometimes it doesn't work out the way you want it to, but it will work out how it works out. And, just don't give up on your dreams if you want it that bad. So I really appreciate you guys having me on, and hopefully you stay up to date with what's going on, and I'll be back in Calgary in the summer. So
We're loving watching the journey unfold, Kendall, and we appreciate you putting some time aside. It's tough with the time zone difference, but we're very happy that you were able to come back on and talk about your experience in Crete. It's a great story in my opinion.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
And one more thing I want to mention, Kendall, and you can just verify this for me. Your matches are on YouTube typically, aren't they?
Yeah, normally they're live streamed on YouTube, or on Action 24 News, which you can find also usually on YouTube or on their like streaming service. So Usually OFI will post the live streaming link on their stories for game days and that sort of thing.
I know I checked out a little bit. I saw the one match where you were playing at home and I could see the sheep behind the goal.
Oh yeah. The animals, yeah, there's always cats running on the field, the dogs, the sheep. It's crazy. It's hilarious.
I was just trying to forward through just to sort of see what I could see. And all of a sudden I'm watching it's like a set piece and you guys have the set piece and I could see behind the net. I'm like, those are sheep behind that fence.
Yeah. It's so funny. It's different. It's Greece.
Okay, thanks to Kendall for taking the time to do the interview. We appreciate it. And Scott, any comments, thoughts about what she talked about? It definitely sounds like it's different. If nothing else, it's language barriers, cultural barriers. But hey, you follow your dreams, right?
Yeah, and as we talked about, I mean, getting to do it at this stage of life, I think it's a bit different than usual. Usually you hear about players going off for the big European tryout or adventure in their late teens, early 20s. So I think for her coming into this experience at the age of 29, it's a little different mentally, but it's still, she still experiences those culture shock things, the language troubles, fitting into a group. But it seems like, she's starting to play and she's broken into the lineup. She's had her starting debut, as she mentioned. So keen to see how the rest of the season fares for her personally, as well as for the team.
Hi, guys. It's Elijah Adekugbe, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So last segment of the episode, Jason, we wanted to talk about players from Calgary and what they've been up to recently. Let's start with Kaylee Hunter. She's been suiting up for Canada's U20 women's team at the CONCACAF Championship qualifying. Canada had a pretty easy time of it in their last trio of games, and so did Kaylee Hunter.
Yeah, some of these scores are kind of awful, aren't they?
More like a Canadian football game. But yeah, so Canada went 3-0 in their qualifying group. 9-0 win against Bermuda, 12-0 win against Trinidad and Tobago, and then an eye-popping 22-0 win against Dominica. So no troubles for Canada at all. No challenge, really. Kaylee Hunter picked up 7 goals in those 3 games, including 5 against Dominica.
It's kind of cool to score 5 goals, but that being said, it probably won't be super memorable considering how it all went down. So yeah, out of the 43 goals, she got 7 of them. I guess that's about 16% of the goals. That's pretty good overall, I think, in the grand scheme of things.
I think it shows that she is a really important player for this team. And you can see some of the goals on social media, right? Like they're posted. And yeah, she's clearly such a talented player. And AFC Toronto fans, I think, are going to see that pretty soon.
Definitely. Next person we want to talk about is Sam Adekugbe. We probably haven't talked all that much about him over the last while on the podcast, but he's been with the Whitecaps now for a while, and he had a real great start to the season. He scored a couple goals in the first couple games for the Whitecaps, but in that second game, I believe it was, he went down with an injury.
Yeah, and he looked pretty distraught, didn't he? I don't know if you saw the video of it, but
yeah, I did.
He looked really emotional, as if he knew it was bad. It's just another, injury in the story of Sam Adekugbe's career, which has seen some really, great highs, like playing at the World Cup and forcing one of Canada's goals. But at the club level, he's had some setbacks, and this is another one.
I can't really take credit for this information. I did find it online, and I apologize to whoever came up with it because I don't remember right now for proper credit, but it was something I found online. And what the info said is that, Sam Adekugbe has missed 30 games since he came back to the Whitecaps in 2023. So yeah, he's been off for extended periods of time.
Yeah, I think if you add up the respective injuries, it totals 145 days, which is that's about 5 months. So lots of time in the treatment room for Adekugbe, lots of rehab. But he is on Canada's provisional roster at the moment, but depending on how this latest injury goes, he might be missing the next window.
Yeah, so hopefully we wish him a quick recovery, but it's kind of tough news for him this past week.
And the last player we wanted to talk about, former podcast guest Sebastian Dzikowski, UBC Thunderbirds star. He talked to you, Jason, last year about how he wanted to play professionally, and he recently signed with a club in Poland, so he appears to be following his dream.
Gee, Scott, I left that one for you because I was hoping you would try the name.
You want me to try this name?
Oh,
okay.
God, I am the worst with the names. I intentionally, that was me, like, I did that on purpose because I'm like, I'm never going to get that name, so maybe I'll leave it for you, but you want to give it a shot?
Yeah. So yes, Sebastian has signed with a club in the 4th division of Polish soccer. The club is called Flota Świnoujście. I don't know how close I was to the proper pronunciation, but I'm almost positive that I butchered it. So I'm just going to call them Flota. As you know, many soccer clubs in Europe are. They're actually a multi-sport club, and they also have bridge and table tennis divisions, which is a pretty interesting combo.
I thought that was the most interesting combination. They play 3 sports, and it's football, bridge, and table tennis. So anyway, he just signed quite recently, so I don't know if he's actually hit the pitch yet and actually played a match or not. But best of luck to him, and quite the adventure. I guess it'll be very different than playing for Vancouver FC in the CPL, I would think.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the table for that division of Polish soccer. Flota is currently in 8th place in an 18-team division. It's called Group 2. They have 7 wins, 6 draws, and 6 losses this season. But they get to play some interesting teams, including the reserves for Lech Poznan, which is a well-known club that competes in the Champions League and Europa League most years. But best of luck to Sebastian. I'm really excited to see that he's taking this step because I know it's something that he talked about with you last year when he was on our podcast.
Not much else for this week, I don't think, Scott. No real news from Calgary FC that I've heard. I'm guessing that we'll be hearing stuff in the near future, but not much to report on this week.
No, I think this is probably one of the only episodes that we've done where we barely talked about Cavalry. But as you mentioned, there really hasn't been any news out of the club in the last couple of weeks since that match in Mexico against Pumas. So hopefully we'll hear more soon. We're still waiting, I think, on maybe 1 or 2 signings to shore up the roster a little bit. But it's been quiet on the Cavalry front in recent days.
Yeah, I'm going to make the prediction right now, and I have no advanced knowledge of this, but by the time we record next week, they'll sign a center back. I'm just
call. I think that is a position where they have a big hole to fill.
I would expect it would be someone a bit experienced, maybe not someone that we would know, but someone with some pro experience. But I think if they're going to announce anybody in the next little while, I think that would be who it would be. So thank you for listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. You can have this podcast downloaded to your device as soon as it becomes available by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other podcasting platforms. Check out our website at yycsoccer.com, where you can look through our episode archive and find other options to listen, including on our YouTube channel. We also have links on the website on how to buy Scott's book about Calgary soccer history. You can leave a question or comment in the Contact Us section of the website. You can also interact with us on social media such as Instagram and Blue Sky, and for the moment still Twitter, where our username is YYC Soccer 403. Thanks for listening.